mud. That's where this story starts. Not gold, not bronze, not stone mud. Because the place where civilization was born had almost nothing else. A flat, sun-cracked strip of land between two rivers. Salty soil, no timber, no stone, no natural walls to hide behind. By every rule of geography, this place should have stayed empty. Instead, it became the birthplace of cities, kings, writing, law, the first complex society human beings ever built. Not because the land was kind. Because it wasn't. This is Sumer, the first world. And everything that came after your calendar, your laws, the hour you just checked on your phone starts here, in the mud. This leads with the most arresting word/idea instead of saving it for the end. And the closing line, the hour you just checked on your phone, gives an immediate personal stake. Viewers know within seconds this connects to them, not just ancient history. If you've seen before Sumer, you already know the setup. The Ice Age ended. People stopped wandering. Farming began. Villages grew along the rivers. By 6500 BC, a culture we call the Ubaid was doing something no one in this region had done before, living in the same fertile, flood-prone floodplain that would later host Sumer's great cities, and surviving only because they learned to control water together. The rise of Sumer, why the south was different. Around 4000 BCE, something shifted in the southern plains. The Ubaid villages grew larger. Trade intensified. Certain settlements began to dominate their regions, and one of them, a city called Uruk, on the banks of the Euphrates, began to grow in a way no settlement in human history had ever grown before. But why here? Why the south, with its salty soil, its brutal summers, its lack of stone and wood? Because of exactly those disadvantages. The south had nothing except grain, and so it had to trade. It built boats, opened routes, organized merchants. It developed systems to track what was owed, what was stored, what was sold. It was the pressure of scarcity that forced them to become ingenious. Uruk, the first true city by 3500 BC, Uruk had somewhere between 25,000 and 50,000 people living within its boundaries. To put that in perspective, there was nothing else like it on Earth. This was not a large village. This was something new. A city. A place where people did not grow their own food, where craft specialists, administrators, priests, merchants, and soldiers lived side by side, each dependent on the others. The city had a massive temple complex, the Anna precinct, dedicated to Inanna, goddess of love and war. And surrounding it, neighborhoods of clay brick houses, workshops, storage facilities, and alleyways. Managing a city of this size required something no human society had needed before: a system to record information beyond what the human mind could hold. The invention of writing, and so, around 3200 BC, the Sumerians invented writing. Not as art, not as literature, as accounting. The first written documents in human history are receipts, tallies of barley delivered to the temple, records of workers paid in bread and beer, lists of livestock owned by the city's administrative elite. These early symbols pressed into wet clay tablets with a reed stylus began as simple pictures. A head with a bowl meant to eat. A foot meant to walk or to stand. Over generations, the pictures simplified into abstract wedge-shaped marks. Scholars today call this script cuneiform, from the Latin word for wedge-shaped. Writing transformed everything. Suddenly, a city could remember across lifetimes. Laws could be recorded, stories preserved, knowledge accumulated, generation after generation, without loss. The Sumerians had just given humanity its external hard drive. The temple economy at the center of Sumerian society, economically and spiritually, was the temple. The Sumerians believed that each city belonged to a god. Uruk belonged to Inanna, Eridu to Enki, Nippur to Enlil. The city's main temple was not just a place of worship, it was the god's estate. The farmland, the workshops, the storage facilities, they belonged to the deity. And the priests managed all of it. They collected grain taxes. They employed thousands of workers. They organized massive construction projects. They controlled the city's surplus, which meant they controlled the city. For centuries, the priest or the high priest was effectively the ruler. The line between spiritual authority and political power had not yet been drawn. First social classes, as cities grew, society stratified. At the top, the temple elite priests, administrators, scribes; in the middle, craftsmen, merchants, skilled workers. At the bottom, laborers, farm workers, and, eventually, slaves, often war captives from rival cities. The Sumerians were not unusual in having social hierarchy. What was unusual was that they wrote it all down. We know what scribes earned. We know what widows were owed. We know the names of merchants who defaulted on loans 4,000 years ago. The past speaks to us from Sumer with a clarity it speaks from almost nowhere else in the ancient world. By 3000 BC, Uruk was the largest city on Earth. Its walls built, legend says, by the great king Gilgamesh stretched for 9 kilometers. Its temples rose above the flat plains in step towers that could be seen from a day's walk away. A new age had arrived. The age of city-states. The city-states, a land of rival cities. Sumer was never a unified country. It was a patchwork, a constellation of independent city-states, each with its own patron deity, its own ruler, its own walls, its own army. Eridu was the oldest Sumerian tradition, called it the first city, the one where kingship descended from heaven. Nippur was the holy city, where Enlil, king of the gods, resided, a city so sacred that to control it was to claim legitimacy over all of Sumer. Lagash grew powerful on the strength of its agricultural wealth. Kish dominated the north. Umma was Lagash's bitter rival. And Ur, wealthy, cultured, prosperous Ur, sat at the mouth of the rivers where they met the sea. These cities were not remote from each other. They were close, interconnected by canals, by trade, by marriage alliances, and by generations of grudges. The shape of a city: if you could stand inside a Sumerian city around 2800 BC, here is what you would see. Rising above everything else, the ziggurat. A massive stepped pyramid of mud brick, its terraces perhaps planted with trees and gardens, rising toward the sky. At its summit, a small shrine, the earthly home of the city's god. Priests ascended and descended on its stairways every day. Around the ziggurat, the temple complex. Workshops producing textiles, pottery, and metalwork. Grain silos the size of houses. Scribal schools where young men learned to press cuneiform into clay, copying lists, proverbs, and hymns until their hands ached. And beyond the temple precincts, the city itself. Narrow alleyways between mud brick houses, open courtyards where families cooked and children played. Taverns, yes. The Sumerians had taverns where workers drank barley beer through long reed straws from communal jars. Markets, where farmers sold surplus grain and merchants displayed imported copper, lapis lazuli, and carnelian from distant lands. At night, families slept on the flat rooftops to catch the breeze. In summer, the temperature could reach 50 degrees Celsius. Life in Sumer was never comfortable. but it was life. Dense, complex, layered human life on a scale the world had never seen. Daily life and the ordinary Sumerian, most Sumerians, were farmers. They rose before dawn, worked the irrigated fields in the early morning before the heat became lethal, and returned home in the afternoon. The staple foods were barley bread and barley beer. The beer was thick, almost a liquid bread, and it was safer to drink than the river water. Children drank it. Old people drank it. Priests made offerings of it to the gods. The Sumerians had over 20 words for different kinds of beer. Women in Sumer had legal standing uncommon in the ancient world. They could own property, sign contracts, operate businesses. A text from Lagash lists female supervisors managing teams of weavers. Another from shows a woman managing a trading enterprise. This was not equality. Sumer was a patriarchal society. But it was more than nothing, and it was more than many civilizations that came after. Rivalry and the coming of war, but between the cities, tension was constant. The conflict between Lagash and Umma is the oldest recorded war in history. For over a century, the two cities fought over a strip of irrigated farmland on their border called the Guidena, the edge of paradise. Treaties were signed and broken. Canals were seized and retaken. Monuments were smashed and rebuilt. What started as border disputes became existential competition, and existential competition required something the priest administrators had not been designed for. It required warriors. It required generals. It required kings. Kings and warfare. The Birth of Kingship. The Sumerian king list, a document compiled around 2100 BC, opens with one of the most extraordinary sentences ever written. After the kingship descended from heaven, the kingship was in Eridu. Kingship descended from heaven. It was not invented by humans, it was a gift, a mandate, a divine institution that moved from city to city as the gods decreed. This was not just mythology. It was political philosophy. The king was not merely a ruler. He was the representative of the gods on earth, responsible for maintaining the cosmic order, for keeping the canals flowing, the harvests coming, the enemies at bay. If he failed, the gods would revoke his mandate and give it to another city. This idea that political authority derives from divine will would echo through every subsequent civilization, from Egypt to Persia to medieval Europe to the divine right of kings. But in Sumer, kingship arose from specific, earthly pressures. The constant warfare between city-states required military commanders. And military commanders, in the moment of crisis, became permanent. Early armies and military technology. The Sumerians built the ancient world's first professional armies. We know this because they recorded it in art, on the standard of a magnificent inlaid wooden box found in the royal tombs, one side showing war, the other showing peace. The war side shows what may be the world's first depiction of a disciplined military formation. Soldiers in close order ranks, wearing heavy cloaks or leather armor, carrying spears and wearing copper helmets. And ahead of them, four-wheeled war wagons pulled by donkeys, the earliest forerunner of the war chariot. These were not raiders. These were armies, organized, equipped, marching in formation under a commander's orders. The cities built walls, massive mud brick ramparts, sometimes 15 meters thick, that could withstand a siege for months. Gates were reinforced with timber and copper. Watchtowers gave defenders a height advantage. And the kings who won wars became the kings who controlled the most land, the most people, the most tribute. Success in war became the ultimate source of political legitimacy. Famous rulers before Sargon among the early kings Several names stand out from the tablets. And Mebaragesi of Kish, possibly the earliest ruler, whose name is confirmed by contemporary inscription, campaigned against Elam to the east. His son Aga, famously, only to be turned back, a story later woven into the epic of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh himself, king of Uruk, perhaps ruling around 2700 BC, was remembered as a great builder and warrior, though the legends around him grew so vast that separating the man from the myth has defeated scholars for a century. Eannatum of Lagash defeated Umma and erected the Stele of the Vultures, one of the oldest surviving historical monuments depicting his armies marching over the bodies of their enemies, with vultures overhead picking the bones. These kings were not gentle, but they built, they wrote, they prayed, and they competed for 300 years in a war of city-states that left southern Mesopotamia exhausted, fractured, and ripe for conquest. The man who came to conquer it was not even a Sumerian. Sargon and the Akkadian Empire, the man from nowhere around 2334 BC, a man named Sargon seized the throne of a city called Akkad, a city in central Mesopotamia, just north of the Sumerian heartland. His origins were deliberately obscure. A later legend described him as a foundling placed in a basket of rushes by his mother and set afloat on a river, where he was found and raised by a gardener. Sound familiar? The story echoes across centuries into the story of Moses. Whether legend or truth, it served a purpose. It made Sargon a man chosen by fate, elevated by the gods, not by birth. What we know is this: he was Akkadian, not Sumerian. The Akkadians were a Semitic people who had lived alongside the Sumerians for centuries, absorbing their culture, their gods, their script. Sargon grew up speaking both languages, navigating both worlds, and he was by any measure a military genius. The conquest of Sumerian, a series of campaigns between roughly 2334 and 2279 BCE. Sargon did what no one had done before. He conquered every city-state in Sumer: Uruk, Ur, Lagash, Umma, Nippur. One by one, the proud independent cities fell. Their kings were brought before Sargon. Some were executed. Others were allowed to rule as vassals, but the old autonomy was gone. The tablets say Sargon washed his weapons in the sea, reaching the Persian Gulf at the southern edge of Sumer and the Mediterranean at the northern edge of Syria. Whether literally or poetically, the message was clear. The known world was now his. He was not the first conqueror in history, but he was the first to build a structure that held conquered territory together through administration rather than just force. The first empire, how it worked: Sargon replaced local rulers with his own governors, loyal Akkadians, who reported directly to him. He standardized weights and measures across the empire, so that a merchant in Akkad and a merchant in Nippur were using the same system. He built roads, some of the earliest in the world, to move armies, messengers, and goods quickly across vast distances. He maintained a standing army of 5,400 soldiers, fed daily from the palace. And he did something symbolically profound. He installed his daughter, Enheduanna, as high priestess of the moon god Nana at Ur. Enheduanna was the world's first named author. Her hymns to Inanna survive on clay tablets to this day, passionate, politically charged, personally revealing poems written by a woman who understood that religious authority was also political authority. In placing his daughter in Ur's holiest office, Sargon was fusing Akkadian political power with Sumerian religious legitimacy. He wasn't destroying Sumer, he was absorbing it. The legacy of Sargon ruled for over 50 years. His son Rimush, and then his grandson Naram-Sin, continued the empire, pushing it further into Anatolia to the north. into Elam to the east, into the Arabian Peninsula to the south. Naram-Sin called himself King of the Four Corners of the Universe and God of Akkad, the first Mesopotamian ruler to declare himself divine in his own lifetime. His hubris became legendary, and later generations blamed the empire's fall partly on his arrogance. Because fall it did. The fall of Akkad Part 6 collapsed the 4.2 kilo-year event around 2200 BC. The climate changed. Modern geological evidence drawn from lake sediments, cave formations, and pollen records across the Middle East shows a prolonged drought beginning around this time. Rainfall dropped sharply across northern Mesopotamia. Agricultural yields collapsed. The farming communities that fed the empire's grain supply began to fail. A clay tablet found at the archaeological site of Tel Leilan in Syria describes, with haunting precision, the signs of collapse: abandoned cities, empty villages, fields reverting to dust. This event, now called the 4.2 kilo-year event, may be one of the first recorded examples of climate change destroying a civilization. It would not be the last. Rebellions and the Gutians' drought meant famine. Famine meant unrest. And unrest meant rebellion. Across the empire, subject peoples rose up. The Akkadian governors lost control of their provinces. Trade routes that had sustained the palace economy dried up along with the rain. And from the Zagros Mountains to the east, a people called the Gutians descended into the plains. The Sumerians called them the Viper of the Mountain, who acted with violence against the gods, who carried off the kingship of Sumer to the mountains. The tablets are not neutral on the subject. The Gutians did not build an empire of their own. They simply disrupted the existing one, moving through the land, extracting tribute, blocking trade, undermining what order remained. The Akkadian Empire, which had shone for a century, collapsed in less than a generation. The cities were not all destroyed, but the administrative system that bound them together dissolved, and into the vacuum, an old power returned. The Sumerian Renaissance, the rise of Ur around 2112 BC, a king named Ur-Nammu took the throne of Ur. He drove out the Gutians. He reunified southern Mesopotamia. And he initiated what scholars call the Third Dynasty of Ur, or simply Ur III, the last great flowering of Sumerian civilization. This was not a restoration of the old city-state system. It was something new, a Sumerian empire, modeled in part on the Akkadian administration, but expressing itself in deeply Sumerian cultural forms. Ur became the greatest city in the world. Its population may have reached 65,000 people. Its harbor connected it to trade networks reaching as far as the Indus Valley, modern Pakistan, thousands of kilometers away. Ships brought copper, gold, ivory, and exotic timber. And at the center of the city rose what remains, even today, one of the most recognizable structures of the ancient world. The Great Ziggurat of Ur, the Ziggurat of Ur, built by Ur-Nammu and his son Shulgi, is a three-tiered stepped pyramid of solid mud brick, its core still standing after 4,000 years. It measures roughly 64 meters by 46 meters at the base, and originally rose about 30 meters into the sky. It was not a tomb. Unlike Egyptian pyramids, it was a platform, a stairway for the god Nana to descend to earth and for priests to ascend toward heaven. A processional staircase ran straight up its front face. Ur-Nammu presented it not as a monument to himself, but as a gift to his god. The inscriptions on its bricks are careful to acknowledge that this was Nana's house, built by a faithful servant. This humility, real or performed, was politically intelligent. Ur-Nammu understood that legitimacy in Sumer flowed through the gods. The first law code, but Ur-Nammu's legacy is not only architectural. He issued what is currently the oldest known law code in the world, the Code of Ur-Nammu, predating the famous Code of Hammurabi by 3 centuries. The laws are remarkable for their specificity and, in many cases, their leniency. Rather than an eye for an eye, they often prescribed monetary compensation. If you cut off someone's foot, 10 shekels of silver. If you broke someone's bone, 1 mina of silver. If a man's wife is unfaithful with another man and this is specifically addressed, there are defined penalties. This was law as a social contract. A formal acknowledgement that disputes could be resolved through systems of justice rather than pure violence. It is one of the most direct lines we can draw from Sumer to modern civilization. We still live under the idea that law applies equally, that disputes have formal resolution, that the state can arbitrate between citizens. Ur-Nammu wrote that down for the first time. Shulgi and the bureaucratic state Ur-Nammu's son Shulgi took this even further. Shulgi ruled for 48 years and transformed Ur III into possibly the most bureaucratically sophisticated state the ancient world had yet seen. He standardized the calendar across the empire. He created a unified system of weights and measures. He reformed the scribal schools, the Aduba, or tablet houses, standardizing the curriculum so that a scribe trained in Ur and a scribe trained in Nippur were producing identical work. Under Shulgi, tens of thousands of clay tablets were produced, records of every transaction, every worker's daily ration, every field's annual yield. Modern scholars estimate that more clay tablets survive from the Ur III period than from any other era of Mesopotamian history. Shulgi also promoted himself as a god, the second Mesopotamian ruler, to do so writing hymns celebrating his divine nature, his athletic prowess, his mastery of music and scribal arts. He was not a modest man, but under his rule, Sumer reached its administrative and cultural peak. For 48 years, the rivers were maintained, the harvests came in, the scribes wrote, the merchants traded, and the priests sang hymns in the temples. It was, in many ways, the last great age. The end of Sumer, the pressure from outside, for all its sophistication. The Ur III state carried the same vulnerability that had doomed the Akkadians, dependence on a complex system with no tolerance for shock. The shocks came from 2 directions simultaneously. From the west, the Amorites. A Semitic people from the Syrian steppe, they had been migrating into Mesopotamia for generations, settling on its edges, taking service as soldiers, gradually moving inward. They were not an invading army, they were a demographic tide, slow and unstoppable. From the east, Elam. The kingdom of Elam, centered in what is now southwestern Iran, had long been a rival of Mesopotamia. Under pressure, its armies pushed westward. The Ur III kings tried to hold the borders. They built a massive wall, the wall that keeps out the Tidnum stretching across the northern approaches to Sumer. It didn't work. Walls rarely stop determined people who have nowhere else to go. The fall of Ur in approximately 2004 BCE, the Elamites sacked Ur. The destruction was catastrophic. The temples were looted. The ziggurat survived. It was too large and too sacred to demolish, but the city's political and administrative center was shattered. And the last king of Ur III, Ibbi-Sin, was carried away in chains to Elam. The tablets record this with stark, matter-of-fact grief. A poem called The Lament for the Destruction of Ur, written shortly after, stands as one of the most moving texts of the ancient world. The city's patron goddess, Ningal, pleads with the divine assembly not to destroy her city. but the fates are sealed. And Ur burns. The poem does not end in triumph. It ends in grief, acceptance, and the quiet promise of eventual restoration. The Sumerians, even in catastrophe, believed the gods had not abandoned them permanently. The disappearance of a language, what followed, was not an immediate dark age. The cities continued. Trade continued. Mesopotamian civilization did not die. But it changed. The Amorites established new dynasties in the old cities, including a small city on the Euphrates called Babylon, which would eventually produce the most famous king in Mesopotamian history, Hammurabi. These new rulers were not Sumerians. They spoke Akkadian, a Semitic language. They worshipped Sumerian gods, but in Akkadian prayers. They used the Cuneiform script, but to write Akkadian words. Over the following centuries, Sumerian ceased to be spoken as a living language. It survived in temples, in scribal schools, in religious texts the way Latin survived in medieval Europe long after Rome's fall. Scribes were trained in it as a classical language, a mark of education and culture. But no one learned it as a mother tongue. No child ran through a Mesopotamian alleyway shouting in Sumerian. The language was gone. The people continued. The civilization transformed what Sumer left behind, and yet everything that came after Babylon, Assyria, Persia, Greece, Rome, the monotheistic religions, the legal traditions, the literary forms, everything bears the fingerprints of Sumer. The 60-second minute and the 60-minute hour Sumerian mathematics. The 12-month calendar Sumerian astronomy, the 7-day week Sumerian cosmology, the concept of a great flood that destroyed humanity written in Sumerian centuries before the book of Genesis. The first hero's journey, the first meditation on mortality, the first written love poem, all Sumerian. Hammurabi's law code, the foundation of Western legal tradition, was itself built on the code of Ur-Nammu. The Hebrew word for the underworld Sheol may derive from the Sumerian land of the dead. The story of creation in Genesis parallels the Sumerian Enuma Elish with striking closeness. We did not build civilization on an empty foundation. We built it on Sumer.